Welcome to the Nourish Child Podcast, a show about childhood nutrition, feeding kids, and dealing with the ups and downs of growing a healthy child. Here's your host, registered dietitian and childhood nutrition expert, Jill Castle.
Hi, Lori. Welcome to the Nourish Child Podcast.
Hey, Jill. Thank you so much for having me.
It's great to have you on the show. And we actually have a point of connection, which is the state of Indiana. I was born and raised there and went to college there, and I understand you as well.
That's right. It's a great place to call home, good place to study. Go Hoosiers.
Yes, go Hoosiers. In fact, my all of my family still lives in Indiana. Indianapolis, Fishers, Fortville, Terre Haute. Terre Haute is where I was born and raised. It's a great state. I get back there probably twice a year.
I love that. Yeah, well, I live in Indianapolis, but familiar with all those areas. Spend a lot of time in Fishers because my kids play basketball, and that's where like all of the basketball gyms are at. So, great place to call home.
Do kids actually grow up in Indiana and not play basketball?
Good question. Yeah, it's funny. I mean, I think my oldest son, especially because he's now a high school basketball player, I think he was like dribbling with his left hand. He's a right-handed child, but he was dribbling with his left hand before he could ride a bike. And that's very Indiana for you. You know, it's like as soon as you can start walking, the basketball's put in your hand. And we do joke about it. We're like, you were able to dribble with your non-dominant hand before you could ride a bike. Most kids can't say that.
That's right. That's right. I know I'm the oldest of four, and my dad made sure we all played basketball. And so I started in fifth grade and played all through high school. Not a very good basketball player, but I made the team. So good enough.
That's great.
So tell us about yourself and how you became involved with fruits and vegetables, because we are talking about making fruits and vegetables fun for kids today and for families. How'd you become involved? How did you select fruits and vegetables as sort of your focus area? And how did you become the produce mom?
Well, thanks. Yeah. So I, for over 10 years, I worked at Indianapolis Fruit Company, which is a very large wholesale distributor of fresh fruits and vegetables and really any food or beverage item that you would find in the produce department. We were a full service supplier for produce departments and about an 18-state delivery corridor that went as far north as Minnesota and as far south as Florida, and pretty much that entire central U.S. corridor. So it was at my time at the sales desk when I got all my knowledge about fruits and vegetables. And it was by working in the supply chain. And at wholesale distribution, you're right smack in the middle of the supply chain where your vendors are the farms, your customers are the downstream, operators, whether that's grocery stores or food service entities. So we had an in-house processing facility where we would do things like make, like the pre-cut fruit and vegetable trays that you can find at the produce department. So because of that, as well as all of the receiving that was taking place in our facility, we had USDA presence pretty much every day. So that also introduced me to the regulatory side of how food moves along the value chain. And really, it's just how my passion began. And I've always been interested in food. I studied Spanish in college at IU, and I did what most people with a foreign language degree do. I went and taught foreign language for a year at the high school level, and realized, gosh, I kind of wanted to use it in a more, just more in a business type way. And so that's how I got my job at Indianapolis Fruit Company. I was resourced to help begin an entire new division at the company focused on Hispanic market sales. So really trying to make sure that all of the bodegas, that was in 2005, the demographics locally in Indianapolis were really turning over to where there was a, large first and second generation Hispanic and Latino population. And with that always comes ethnic grocery stores. So anytime you can see that turnover with the grocery stores, whether it like right now in where I live in Indianapolis, it's a large population of first and second generation Burmese. And so we're having like Chin grocery stores, which that wasn't even on the radar, when I was in 2005, it was all about the Mexican grocery stores. So it was an amazing 10 years at the sales desk where I was calling on produce department managers and building that business for Indie Fruit where they could connect with a very specific demographic of shopper and grocery retailer. I learned a lot about consumer insights, the cultural side of food, how fresh produce is this unique uniting force amongst all people of all cultures all around the world. Fruits and vegetables are part of our diet. You really can't say that about any other component of the plate. That we are a component of the plate that is never, the consumption of our products is never discouraged, whether it's for medical, cultural, religious, geographical regions. Like we are a grand connector in what feels like a pretty divisive world right now. So I started to see my work with a larger light than just like I'm a produce sales rep, I really leaned into that cultural side of it. I connected with my customers, my business, my former bosses saw that and they, started to diversify my accounts. And that was also foundational in my ability to do what I'm doing today. So I was taking care of all sizes and formats from like your large scale grocery stores like Kroger. I was supporting them to like we've talked about college juice bars and vitamin shops and natural products stores, very different type of grocery retailer than a big box Kroger or a Mexican bodega that you see in your, neighborhood. So those were all, and then I even I had one account, I call it out when I have an opportunity to talk about my sales time. One of the accounts where I learned so much about the foodie side of our industry. There was a grocery store on the North Shore of Chicago called Fox Nobel, and it was where Oprah Winfrey's chef shopped, and Oprah when she did her own grocery shopping, but usually it was her chef. And it was so fun for me because the produce manager would say, okay, we need to get XYZ. It was a lot of forage foods like fennel-head ferns. And like when morel mushrooms were in season in Indiana, we would secure those. And they were like, this is for Oprah. We need this, you cannot short this. This is for Oprah's chef. And so I had so much fun at the sales desk supporting all of our customers at Indie Fruit. And it was in the last 3 years of my employment there where I was elevated to a marketing manager role. So I went from being an account manager in sales to the marketing manager for the whole company. I really wasn't looking to get out of sales. I loved what I was doing, but I had 2 kids at the time who were in daycare and I just needed more money. And so it was like the one managerial level job that opened up and I was like, okay, I'll apply. And that's a whole nother story. I tell that whole story on episode 1 of our podcast, but it was during my time as sales manager when I pitched the idea, and it was 2012. So the blogging, craze was kind of just beginning at that point. Yeah. And so I pitched the idea to my former employers, hey, we need a blog that is all about the produce department. We can talk about specific brands, do branded campaigns and marketing, as well as just educating people on how to select, store, and serve fruits and vegetables. And when you look at the value chain, the business side of how produce moves from the farm to the point of sale, the only stage of the whole supply chain that can really talk about the entire produce department with it being in scope for what the business stands for is wholesale distribution. Because if you're a farmer and you're growing spinach, like you have no vested interest in educating people on how to select, store, and serve corn or strawberries or anything else. Like you are fully all in with driving the sales of spinach. And I think that we can all identify that. I mean, it's like, yes, great brands like Chiquita, they're doing good marketing 365 days a year. How many of us are truly interested in 365 days of banana content, And so that's how I was able to kind of identify the categorical and global void in our industry for comprehensive marketing that represents all fruits and vegetables, that's not tied to a retailer, that's not tied to one specific grower, but rather just like a leading resource for all things fruits and vegetables. And it was at that moment when I pitched it that my former employer was like, okay, we're in, especially when I told him we could start a blog for about $5.99, and just, you can't do it today at that price, but back then you could have a really good blog for less than $10. And I was like, we'll just use my time to author it. And I had a company issued Nokia flip phone. I took the photos with that. And today things have changed so much. The biggest change took place in 2015 when my former employers took me to an offsite lunch and said, hey, we're done with this, but we think that you could keep it going if you want. And they presented me with a path A and a path B. It was like path A, you go back to your sales job. We sunset the produce mom. Path B, you can buy it. And, they offered me an acquisition, purchase offer. And so obviously here we are talking in 2023, the brand name is now the Produce Moms. We're now B Corp certified, and I'm now not just the founder and the author, but I'm also the owner. So it's been a really great journey.
Yeah. Great story. Great story. I loved what you said about, fruits and vegetables sort of crossing all demographics, all medical conditions, all walks of life, really. And at the same time, it is one of the most challenging food groups to get Americans to eat. Yeah. So what's going on with that? Like this audience the audience that's listening today is primarily parents, some healthcare providers, but primarily parents. So what is going on? Why is it so hard to get Americans to eat fruits and vegetables?
I mean, I think it just comes down to what we can all relate to, right? Like our kids want cookies and chips, not broccoli and blueberries. The fruit is a little bit easier to get them interested in than the veggies usually. But I think there's a lot of contributing factors, and certainly some of it comes back to flavor profiles. Some of it comes back, a lot of it, in my opinion, comes back to just marketing, ease of access, the non-perishable nature of most junk food. It's very like you open a bag and it's ready to go, as opposed to a lot of fruits and veggies. I mean, there's a reason why what we call value added, which is that section in the grocery store of, like I mentioned, the pre-cut fruit and veggie trays. Well, now it's like pre-cut individual snack size. Well, the reason you continue to see that section evolve and expand at grocery retail is because the consumer demand for those products is through the roof. It's the fastest growing category within the entire produce department right now. It reminds me of like the bag salad category when I was at the sales desk. That was exploding, as well as organics exploding in the early 2000s. And now it's the snacking, ready to eat items. So it first of all, every parent, every healthcare provider, anyone who's listening, the struggle is so real. I mean, I work in DC often. I'm part of a political action committee. The International Fresh Produce Association has organized a Fresh Pack, and I'm part of that. I'm a non-paid lobbyist. I go to the Hill. I actually pay to lobby. I think it's like part of our diligence. It's part of our activist side of the produce moms. And the only policy I really work on is child nutrition policy, federal level child nutrition policy. So with a strong emphasis on USDA school meals as well as WIC. So this data that I'm getting ready to share, this is all data that I share when I'm talking to our elected officials in DC or staffers as we're, actively working on Farm Bill and trying to get a larger piece of the budget pie, as well as a priority for fresh form fruits and vegetables and all of these nutrition programs that exist in America. So the truth is 90% of Americans aren't eating the recommended amounts of fruits and vegetables on a daily basis. So that includes you and I, Jill. That includes like our children. That includes people of all ages. When you look at the teenage demographic, that is actually from a consumption standpoint, that's the worst. 98% of America's teens are not eating the recommended amounts of fruits and vegetables on a daily basis. If you extrapolate the fruit from the veg, you get slightly stronger numbers there, but we're still not at more than 10% of us eating the recommended amounts on a daily basis. Now, there's a big debate in our industry. Like it's a contention point in the fresh produce industry. Is demand and consumption actually down? I'm on the school of thought, and we're actively working on research to, prove this. Like everyone needs data. So right now, this is an anecdotal statement, but I believe that consumption and demand is up. I think it's been going up year over year since I've been at the sales desk. And the reason I say that is because if you look at the data surrounding cold storage within the United States for fresh farm foods, like that's just gone up and up and up exponentially year over year. If you look at the footprint of the produce department or grocery retail at large and what's happening at the perimeter and specifically in produce as it relates to SKUs and the SKU expansion, new products being introduced, we're not seeing a smaller footprint in produce. We're actually quite the opposite. We're seeing a larger footprint. We're seeing a stronger mix of products that are on shelf. The average produce department in the United States today has over 200 different items in it. That's a ton. You don't see that in any other section of the grocery store. So excuse me. But so it's, I do think, to come back to your original question, why is it hard to get kids to eat fruits and vegetables? Well, I think it comes down to select, store, and serve first and foremost. I think that we're all creatures of habit. And there's a lot of reasons why we're creatures of habit. We're time starved. We're budget starved. When you walk into the produce department, are you really going to pick up an eggplant if your child's never had an eggplant and roll the dice that I might really be buying this and wasting not just, the $4 that I spent on this eggplant, but the 30 minutes of time that I spent to prep this eggplant, So that's what I think we all fall into those ruts of we eat the same 5 to 10 meals in our home on rotation. And that means our grocery list doesn't have a whole lot of diversity on it. And so one of our objectives at the Produce Moms, and we encourage not just a consumption and volume, but it's really all about variety introduction as well. So that's, and getting your kids involved in the process. I know that there's plenty of experts, probably several of your guests who have come on this show and talked about the power of, giving children ownership in their food choices. We've seen great success with that through our platform and community at the Produce Moms, whether it's getting children involved with grocery shopping, meal planning, backyard gardening, or even, the cooking, obviously, but also even just when the groceries come home or when they're delivered to your doorstep, sometimes it can be as simple as seeing which items they can identify.
Kids change a lot. Their nutrition needs, eating habits, and food preferences do too. So much so, it can be hard to keep up. The Nourished Child, a website designed for parents who want more nutrition education, helps parents like you get crystal clear on raising good eaters. We've cracked the code on nourishing the whole child, whether you're raising a baby, a teen, or a child with health concerns. Our nutrition school and parent education programs help you get the inside scoop on food and nutrients, positive food parenting, and building self-motivated, autonomous kids who are good eaters. Visit thenourishedchild.com today.
And if they can't identify an item, turn it into a game. It's like a discovery game. We'll use eggplant again. This eggplant was grown in a greenhouse in Canada. Let's look it up on the map, and figure out where this is from. Oh, and then you start researching eggplant and you realize, wow, it's really popular in Italy. Here's some Italian dishes that use eggplant. So there's ways where we can kind of pull at, and it comes back to my previous sentiments about culture. We can pull on those culture heartstrings, bring food into the essence of life, and it will make it a more interesting component of the plate. I'm not sure when it happens, but I'm not sure when it happened, I should say. But there is a shift in awareness that I'm seeing in my own household. Now, granted, my son is now 15 and he is on a varsity basketball team, but it's gotten to the point where like he cares about performance nutrition. And I do think it's one of the positives of social media. You do get a lot of influence from various personalities online about the power of a healthy lifestyle. And the same way we're seeing trends with teens not drinking alcohol, we are seeing some of those same trends as it relates to plant-based lifestyles, as well as just overall wellness and healthy choices. At the Produce Moms, I think it's important for you, Jill, to know, as well as everyone who's with us today, we do not, we don't promote, I know I just said plant-based lifestyles. We don't promote any sort of lifestyle. Our mission is we want to get more fruits and vegetables on every table. And whether you're serving veggies with a steak or veggies with tofu, we don't care, and I do think that that's really important. We also are very sensitive to the fact that not everyone can walk into the grocery store. As a matter of fact, most of us cannot walk into the grocery store and just purchase our food by what we want to eat. So much of what we purchase is a budget-driven or access-driven decision. And with that comes a very important priority at the Produce Moms to never disparage any form of farming. If you're choosing a conventionally grown fruit or vegetable, or even if you're choosing like a canned fruit or vegetable, even though we're all about fresh form, like we are not here to make you feel guilt about that. We are here to always celebrate your choice to choose a fruit or a vegetable, regardless of how it's farmed, where it's farmed, which section of the grocery store you picked it up in. Like, we're just really glad that you're choosing fruits and vegetables. And we view that as a critical first step in all of our quests to get more fruits and veggies on every table.
Yeah. Let me follow up with a question on that, because I think that, there are a lot of families who are budget conscious, and grocery prices have been going up and up and up. I kind of jokingly say to my husband every time I go to the grocery store, everything costs $5. It doesn't matter what I'm buying. Everything seems to have a $5 price tag on it. And I'm on the East Coast, so that may be, representative of my geographic location. But when we're talking about the families who are budget conscious, who are operating on a limited budget for food, how can they make fruits and vegetables part of their everyday menu, including fresh? I mean, I'm interested in hearing, and I'm sure others too, like what would be your tips for those budget conscious families to be able to pick out fresh fruits and vegetables, as well as frozen, canned, dried, whatever?
I love this question. And it's something I really, I've been answering it for years, and the answer's never changed, because I do think that the answer's right in front of all of us. It's follow the ads. I know that sounds very like, duh, but it really is the truth. So the way that your fresh food economics works, when there's an abundance, that's because growing conditions were ideal. And chances are the growing conditions are ideal because the crop is in what we call peak seasonality. So you're going to have optimal flavor. You're going to have the cheapest price of the year because it's, available in abundance. So you're getting into those supply demand economics. And typically that's when there's really promotable prices at grocery retail. So if you simply follow the ads of your preferred grocery retailer, you can expose yourself to some of the most delicious fruit or veg that is available in, a seasonal structure. So you're going to throughout the year, you're going to be exposed to great variety. You're going to be exposed to great value. And most importantly, it's going to taste really good, because when something's promotable in the value chain, it's because the supply is abundant, because the growing conditions were ideal. And that always, in the world of farming, yields the best tasting premium product. I can't think of another consumer good, especially in food, where when you've got your premium product, it's typically available at the most value price. I mean, you can't say that about so many other components of the plate or really any other consumer good that I'm aware of. So that's really step one. And then there's other options, of course, and as someone who's worked on WIC and USDA school meal policy, I do a little bit with SNAP and EBT, but it's not my primary focus right now. I'm really focused on school meals, and then WIC as my secondary line of focus. But there's a lot available for federal nutrition programs and offerings. And I do think that one thing we can all do, regardless of what your household, access is, your household food budget is, one of the number one things we can all do is quit bashing school meals. Because
amen.
Yeah. First of all, school meals are highly regulated. They're very nutrient dense foods. Most of the components on the plate are sourced from our American farmers and food manufacturers. And when someone who has the choice to bring a lunchbox or lunch money to school, or has the choice to send their kid with a lunchbox or lunch money to school, in the same breath of like, I pack my kid's lunch. Okay, fine. Stop your sentence there, as opposed to continuing on and saying, because school lunches are garbage and yada, yada, yada. And shutting down this, really throwing shade at this food supply that for 51% of our nation's children, that is what they rely on. That is the number one source of food sustainability for America's youth. So if we want to be, compassionate stewards to society, quit bashing school meals, because your bashing hurts the participation. And not only does it hurt the participation, but it creates a really poor stigma. And how does it make the kid feel who doesn't have the choice of a lunchbox? They only have the choice of participating in school meals because it's what the government provides, So I do think
and it has a ripple effect on the farmers as well. It has
a ripple effect on the farmers, and food culture, and the equitable conditions within the equitable access to food for children in America. It's really amazing that our country provides such a nutrient dense meal every single day, regardless of the student's ability to pay for it. And many states, like Massachusetts, just recently announced universal school meals for all. So that's we're pushing for that in Farm Bill, for it to be a federal universal. And some states are actually taking the initiative and moving forward. I think Massachusetts was the 7th or 8th state. And I think if we don't get it passed in this Farm Bill, I think we will. But if we don't, I think what we'll continue to see is more and more states join that. Force of saying, like, school meals are a universal free offering, the same way school buses and textbooks and technology and all the other components for the whole being of the child at school are provided.
Yeah. I mean, it is food shaming. Basically,
it is 100% food shaming
at its best. And I have episodes on food shaming and articles on the Nourished Child around that topic. And it is really, food shaming is so elitist, and it comes from a place of privilege and can be completely tone deaf when you're looking at just the societal pressures that so many of our families are living under. It is a privilege to be able to choose. And as you said, many children don't have a choice.
You're right. And that privilege also exists with how we approach the grocery store, or, dining out, or shopping at this grocer versus the farmer's market versus the meal delivery system. You know what I mean? Like, there is a lot of that. And food deserts certainly are still very real, but I applaud retailers like Dollar General who are making sure that they're utilizing their brick and mortar and their footprint and what was, fresh food deserts, and turning those into opportunities for urban and poorer regions of our nation to have access to fresh food, as well as a retailer that accepts, the SNAP and EBT benefit.
Yeah. Yeah, that's great. I didn't know that Dollar General was doing that. That's wonderful.
Yeah, they actually just won an award within the last 2 years, Produce Retailer of the Year, because they dedicated such a large footprint. They went from like 0 to 100 so quickly. You know what I mean? Like their acceleration in the space was tremendous. We're also seeing really big strides being made by C-store, as well as like pharmacy businesses like Walgreens and CVS, bringing more fresh food in. And a lot of that is spearheaded by the food as medicine movement, where you're getting produce prescriptions, medically tailored meals, et cetera. But also just with that comes, a more deliberate commitment to making sure that their brick and mortar locations have more fresh food options.
Yeah. Yeah. So this wouldn't be a podcast if we didn't talk about picky eaters. And so many of my listeners are, dealing with children who are picky eaters, toddlers, but even older kids. What tips do you have for making fruits and vegetables more appealing to those picky eaters?
It's hard. Okay. I know that I keep saying it's hard. It is hard. If it were easy, we would all be eating the recommended amounts every single day, And so remember that statistic, 90% of us aren't. So if you can just get one more fruit or vegetable in your diet one time a day, like that's a really great place to start, and then you can build upon it from there. So how do we get kids more interested? Well, I will say that our community at the Produce Moms, which to date now spans millions of households across America and around the globe, but everyone seems to really appreciate things like our food art, and some of these are really simple things, like you have a bowl of oatmeal in the morning, and just with a few small steps, you can turn that bowl of oatmeal into a bear, by doing like a couple banana slices and blueberries and, make it look like a bear. And those are things that we've seen really good, strong response on. And then, of course, we have more elaborate ones too. Like if you want to do some big 3D, we have one of my favorites is a parrot that we have on like a parrot fruit tray. And so those are very fun. We have a whole section on the website dedicated to food art. I think that's a great way to, kind of make them more exciting, because just like adults, and we all eat with our eyes first, including our kids, so if you give them a plate of mushy, greens, like probably not super appealing for you or them. Vegetables I find to be a lot harder than fruit in my household and in my journey and one of the things that I gave up on, like my kids just preferred raw vegetables, and I was like, no problem. And as a matter of fact, both of my kids, they really only liked about 3 different vegetables each, which I think is actually pretty good. But I didn't really press it. Like if they wanted baby carrots every single day, then fine. They would just get a cup of baby carrots, and I would still prepare like, the salad course or the hot vegetable that I was planning anyway for our family meal. And I would just ask my kids, and this was a stretch and it was not always easy, but I said, you don't have to eat it. Like I never forced my kids to eat anything, but I did say, I would appreciate you to have just one bite, just one taste. And then I told him one of the studies that came my way from a tomato grower actually that we work with is our taste buds change approximately every 6 months. And so I would tell them that. And I said, if you don't like it, you don't have to eat it again for another 6 months. And then we'll try it again. And through that gentle discovery, like one of my kids became a fan of peas. Neither of them really liked them. And, it's such an easy, affordable vegetable. I love them. So we make them a lot. You can buy those bags of peas at certain times. They're like $1 in the frozen section. So we eat them a lot as our hot vegetable at dinner. And for years, my kids were like, they'd try one pea. No, not interested, and then now they're both pea eaters. They both like them. They're, and it just, so I hate to say it's like, there's no secret sauce. I mean, if there was a secret sauce or like a flip of a switch, none of us would be in this situation. We would have all already taken advantage of that trick. Right. But I think that I think that gentle persistence, like it's going to take that mom grit to keep going but also creating a culture and a climate where trying food is, it's a search and discovery process. It's not like there's no room for food shaming. And that includes like getting mad. Unfortunately, I mean, you can't get mad at your kids if they don't like something, I know how frustrating it is. You spend a long time preparing something and you spend your food budget, to purchase it. And the last thing you want to hear is someone say they don't like it, Exactly. So, and trust me, we had plenty of those moments around our kitchen table, and I would just have to swallow my pride and put a smile on my face and say, that's okay. And then I would also teach them, like, you do know that if you're a guest at someone else's home or someone else takes you out to dinner and this happens, like, I do expect you to, even if you're not really enjoying the food, I do expect you to eat it, if someone else other than your mom is serving it. And so, that's kind of how we handled it in our household. And it took, my youngest is 13, my oldest is 15. And it took every bit of 13, 15 years to kind of turn that tide and get them more interested in fruits and vegetables. But I will say one of the most powerful strategies to get my children more interested in a wide variety of fruits and vegetables was being participatory in school meals. Since day one, my children don't know what it means to come to school with a lunchbox. They haven't done that since like preschool when when everyone took a lunchbox, there was no school lunch offering. But now that they are in schools where there are USDA school meal offerings, they both have been participatory in those since day one. And like one great story I love to share with people, my oldest son was in elementary school, and he said to me, he's like, Mom, do we have any cucumbers? And like 9 times out of 10, I can pretty much on demand provide my children with whatever fruit or vegetable they want, because between what we produce for the producemoms.com as well as what I consume in my own lifestyle, we have a ton of fresh produce in our house at all times. And I was so disheartened though, because the one day he asked me for a cucumber, I did not have one at home. And I was like, I'm so sorry. I didn't even know you liked cucumbers. And he's like, Mom, I eat them every day. I was like, you eat them every day? And he said, well, yeah, they're on the salad bar at school. And so that was back in the day when salad bars were a thing. Salad bars have changed a lot in the post-COVID world, but they do still exist. It's just mostly like prepackaged offerings or pre-made salad offerings. But pretty powerful that the son, my oldest son, the son who doesn't really know life without his mom spearheading this movement that's all about fruits and vegetables, became a fan of cucumbers through his school meal program.
Yeah. I mean, there is just so much to be said about that gentle persistence. I like how you put that. And the fact that it takes time. I mean, I've raised 4 kids, and I'll never forget when my oldest daughter was probably 12. We went out to a restaurant, and I was like, I'm just going to see what she's ordering on her own. This is when we were living in Nashville. And she went up and ordered a Greek salad. I could not believe it.
Oh my gosh. Yes.
Of all the options on the menu, she ordered a Greek salad. And I was like, yes, this quiet exposure over time and positive attitude and no pressure, it totally works. But you've got to be ready to invest the time. And it's not a year. It could be 10, 15 years.
Yeah.
But kids do come around.
You're right. That's a beautiful story. And I have had moments like that myself, when they go from choosing just fries always as their side to, maybe they'll get the fruit cup or they'll choose a salad. Like it's an amazing moment. And role modeling cannot be, overstated or understated. I don't know how we should phrase that. Role modeling is critical. Okay.
Sure.
So,
yes.
And it is one of those key recommendations for the dietary guidelines is access and role modeling. And and one thing I tell people when I'm preparing my food, whether it's, we're hosting 10 families on a Saturday for a, barbecue, or if it's just a family dinner, the very first thing I always prep, no exceptions. This is the holy grail of my home kitchen. I prep my fruits and vegetables first, because without doubt, you are going to run out of time. You're going to get fatigued. You're going to be over it by the time you get, going in the kitchen. And it's a lot easier to cut a side or cut the fruits and vegetables than it is to cut the main course. So if you start with the fruits and vegetables always as your meal prep, that also means they're the very first thing that's available if someone wants to snack on something before the meal's ready. And that strategy alone has empowered a surge of consumption in my home kitchen.
Yeah. I would say too, just another thing that I did when I was raising my kids was I made a point to serve fruit at every meal.
Yeah.
Vegetables, lunch and dinner for sure, but like fruit at every meal. They started breakfast with fruit. They had fruit in their lunch. They always had fruit at the dinner table, which, by the way, parents, fruit at the dinner table really does help cure that sweet tooth and can cut down on, the constant requests for dessert. When it's just part and parcel of the meal, it really is very satisfying. So there are lots of different ways to make kids, make fruits and vegetables fun for kids and tasty and more prevalent in their day. Lori, it's been great to have you on the show. Are there any parting words you'd like to say about the produce moms, or say to parents out there who might be struggling to get more fruits and vegetables on the menu for their families?
I just think this is your reminder that you are not alone in that journey. Okay. And do not overthink it. Just continue to try. It's a worthy effort for any of us to introduce children to fruits and vegetables, to let them see us enjoying them, and to make them a priority when it comes to planning your meals. But I'm just so proud of all of us. Change begins at home and with moms in particular. So keep up the good work to everyone who's tuning in. Thanks for being part of today's show. Jill, thank you so much for having me. If you want to learn more about me or my business, theproducemoms.com is where you can go. We're on also every social platform. We also have a podcast. Our social platforms, all of our handle, on every platform, our handle is The Produce Moms.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Lori.
Thank you.
I appreciate all your all the work that you're doing, especially in the school nutrition and WIC arena.
Thank you. Yeah, going to a Farm Bill meeting in a couple weeks. So looking forward to it. Yeah.
Well, good luck. I'll be rooting for you.
Thanks for listening to the Nourished Child Podcast, where the #1 goal is to help you grow a nourished child inside and out.